Before I get into this A Decade Later video, I just wanted to remind you guys that you can get A Decade Later requests through over on my Patreon. You can pick any you want, as well as that, you can get track reaction requests as well. So if you're interested in supporting your friend, your boy, your man, your whatever, I don't know, you can go over to Patreon and consider donating. I would greatly appreciate it. But now we need to get into talking about Adele. Hang on. There we go. Adele is someone that does not need an introduction, really. She is at that level of fame where she could probably drop a song at any moment without really giving it any hype, and it would be huge. It would crash into the charts at #1 for probably weeks on end. She would break some kind of record somewhere. Not entirely sure what the record would be, but there would be some kind of broken record within an album release cycle of hers, whether it's a song, whether it's sales, whether it's, you know, something in the charts or whatever. We've seen her do it before. She's had some of the biggest songs of the 2010s. Someone Like You is on this very album. Is a huge track that was massive worldwide. One of the biggest songs of the 2010s, like I just said. She's at the level of artists like Drake at this point, Taylor Swift, Beyonce, those kinds of artists that just have such a wide pull from all angles and just appeal to all kinds of audiences, to the point where it doesn't really matter whether the song or the album is even any good. People are gonna be buying it in huge numbers and streaming it in huge numbers as well. You could add Ed Sheeran to that list, although I was dead set. I was so dead set that he was gonna flop. But then Bad Habits seems to have become one of the biggest songs of the year, so my predictions are way off. But yeah, I really thought Ed Sheeran was... I thought his days were numbered. Getting on to 21 though, this is definitely considered her best album. 25 got pretty good reviews and a warm reception as well, winning a Grammy, of course. It's not like people didn't like it, but I definitely think 21 at this point is considered the best album that Adele has made. Pretty easy to see why, honestly. I do think it has some of her best singles and best deep cuts as well. I think there's a really good array of deep cuts on this album that actually don't get talked about when people talk about Adele, but it's probably because the singles are usually that big that they just end up taking up the bulk of the conversation. However though, I actually want to start off by highlighting the deep cuts because I think they are the ones that deserve quite a bit of shine actually when talking about this album. I think Turning Tables, for example, has a beautiful piano lead. I think the piano in this track is great. Any Regina Spektor song would go head to head with this kind of piano, and that's pretty high praise coming from me because I'm a big Regina fan, as you know. Pained, emotive delivery on Don't You Remember. I think she is good at kind of expressing her voice in that kind of way, but I think on this particular track as well, she really sells the emotion more so than she does on quite a few of these tracks actually. Don't You Remember the Reason You Left Me, she asks her previous partner. It's all pretty surface level stuff in the way that she presents it, but I think the one thing that you kind of have to take away from tracks like this is how the singer is presenting those words. Sometimes it can just be all a bit cliche, and I do think Adele steps into that territory sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, but because she is such a good singer, she actually gets away with it in places. Set Fire to the Rain, obviously not one of the deeper cuts. This was one of the big singles from the album, but I think this actually proves that point the best, actually, where the vocals, I think, carry this song the most. She's incredibly expressive on this one. I love the way that she enunciates almost every word, even in the verses. She just brings out really cool melodies coming through. The part where she's like, there's a sound to you that I never knew. It's so great. But obviously it's completely different to the first part of the verse. I actually think the lyrics on the chorus are just like so melodramatic to the point where it's a bit like, ugh, come on, you could have wrote this a bit better. But I think because it is just so anthemic and so recognizable that, again, she gets away with it. And she has a great voice to carry it too. I wouldn't think these kinds of lyrics would work if you got like, I don't know, Miley Cyrus singing it instead. No diss to Miley Cyrus, but obviously she's not that great of a singer. So I think you do need a great voice carrying this kind of song. But I think that becomes quite apparent on tracks like One and Only, and even the song, the cover song of The Cure's Love Song too, where like, if it was a different singer singing the track, obviously it's not, but they're pretty standard sounding songs. Like there's not a huge amount that makes the song pop or recognizable, but it is just the fact that her voice is so good that you kind of let the songs get a bit of a pass, because honestly they aren't that memorable as individual tracks, but it's the fact that she's singing them that make them a bit more passable. One and Only not only just kills the momentum of the previous track, which I will get onto, but this soulfulness that's supposed to be there just isn't there. She doesn't really carry it on this one, really. It's like the soul without soul. It's like a Sharon Jones and the Dap King song without Sharon Jones's soulful energy. I just feel like she needs a bit more oomph to her on this track that she just isn't bringing, because she brings it completely on the track before I'll Be Waiting for You. This is a huge track. The chorus is great. It's such a blue-eyed soul like homage. Obviously her influences are pretty obvious at the best of times, but this is like the most obvious in terms of where she's pulling from, and it's great. The track just coming after One and Only just kills off that momentum, and then the song Love Song, which is again the Cure cover. I don't know, man. I think the song is so iconic. The original song is so iconic that trying to cover it is very hard. But she covers it in the most Adele way you can imagine. She doesn't even attempt to really put a spin on it. She just makes it into a kind of slow ballady track. It's just a bit of a letdown, really. So back to my original point, like there are tracks like this where like without her voice, I don't know what these songs would do. they'd be drowning, man. They'd be drowning without any kind of lifeguard to save them. But it's really when she brings the extra oomph that she shines. Like I say, I'll Be Waiting for You, Rolling in the Deep, such a powerful entry to the album. The entrance here is just so, very much like, you know, Aretha Franklin inspired, with the kind of powerful soul that's just driving the song, that's just driving the momentum. Maybe a bit of Amy Winehouse in there as well. Possibly her best song. It's at least the best single I think she's ever released. And actually, if you remember, I did include this song in my favourite pop songs of the 2010s list. So there you go. If you'd never watched that video, you could go back to it and see what I included in that list. But there's a lot of other good tracks as well. Rumour Has It has that smoky swag to it, which I think really works. You've got He Won't Go, which I really like the way the piano like syncopates with her vocals on the chorus. I think that works really nicely. Pretty cool as well how it changes from I Won't Go to then He Won't Go. Pretty like confusing track in terms of the emotions, but I think she pretty sells it. I think she pretty much sells it well. She sells that story pretty well as well. I think a lot of people have been in that situation, and I think that really works with the way she's selling it. And of course, talking about selling lyrical ideas, lyrical arcs, lyrical themes, you can't not mention Someone Like You, which I think is a huge track in the sense that it could easily come across as incredibly bitter, but it just doesn't at all. In fact, in many ways, it's essentially just someone outlining how they feel, but then also saying, look, you know what, I'm happy for you at the end of the day, but this is just where I'm at, and this is hurting me to see that you've moved on, but I still want the best for you. It's handled very smartly. Like I say, this could come across the opposite, as the effect could be the opposite of what it actually was. So I think she did a really good job of this, and you can see why it became so big, because I think, again, if there was a bitterness in it, I don't know if it would have carried over to as many audiences, unless you did it in a kind of like comedic Lily Allen kind of way, where you're just saying how bad in bed the other person is. Like you could make it work like that, but without that comedic element, I don't think it would work. I will say this song is a bit of a victim of the UK overplay. Rhyming out here. Yeah, this one I've just heard this too much. I've heard this walking in random shops. I've heard this on the radio everywhere I go. I mean, let's not forget, you know, it's not that old of a song. I mean, it's about 10 years old now, but I still remember the point where this was just everywhere. Everyone was playing it. And I think it is just hitting a point where I'm not as eager to play it as I used to be, or maybe as I want to be, because I've just heard it so many times. I'm sure I worked a wedding as well where this was the wedding dance song. I'm sure, my memory, it can't be lying to me. It could be, but I'm sure this was a thing. And it's like, this song of all things, it's about a breakup. Why do you want this? But yeah, aside from that, good album. Good album. Really good album, actually. I think returning to it for this video actually reminded me that it is actually a really good album. I keep saying actually, but it actually is. I do think it has a bit of a reputation now for being, you know, the kind of wine mum album. You know, it's only for the older people, the older generations. It's very adult contemporary. It's very safe for the radio. It's got all of those kinds of things attached to it. But you know what? I think with as many albums that have been like this in the mainstream for as many years as it has been, I think Adele is one of the best at doing it. Like, I don't just take any old piano, sad breakup song lightly, especially in the mainstream. They're usually a bit corny. They're usually a bit, nah. It can go the other way. I don't really like it at all when Ed Sheeran tries doing it. But I think when you've got someone that just is such a powerful presence behind the microphone that Adele is, I think you can get with it. And I think you need that kind of voice to make these songs work. And I think she does. So I think it is a very good album. I think it is an album that has aged well too. Aside from a few moments that are just a bit meh, I think most of this album is actually really good. So let me know your thoughts in the comments if you have heard this. If you never have, let me know if you are going to try it based on this video. But I'm sure you probably have heard it at this point anyway. Do tell me what you think, if you agree with me or disagree with me. Would love to know your thoughts. Tell me what I should review next as well. Have a good day and goodbye.